Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Tonight we're learning Elu Nishmat Rabbi Avram ben Reb Chaim Yehuda and Yecheskel ben Rabbi Avram. So, okay, tonight you guys have to buckle. So the way it's going to work, we're going deep tonight, but it is so amazing. It's once you see how everything plugs in, the more that you focus, the more it's going to be like a drug. You're gonna be addicted to Torah after this. I'm telling you. And I was preparing today for it, and I wasn't feeling well. And about, I don't know, 2 hours ago, I was telling my wife, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I could give the class. Maybe I shouldn't. And then I was like, let me start pushing it. And I was preparing it. I was reviewing it, and then everything started plugging in, and I got so hyper. I got so much energy all of a sudden, just from how everything plugs in so beautifully. So the reason why I'm giving you this introduction is there is the appreciation, enjoyment that you'll have is the amount that you'll be able to stay with me and be focused. It's phenomenal. I'm going to try to simplify it as much as I can. And even if you don't get something, just bear with me. It's going to all make sense, hopefully, at the end, or at least mostly at the end. Okay. So we're going to start off with something from Rabbi Pinchas Friedman in Parshas Vayeshev. The pasuk, Rabbi Pinchas Friedman is a phenomenal. He writes something called the Shvilei Pinchas. It's so deep, so amazing. It's really, really, phenomenal work that I recommend everybody to learn. But you really have to learn it. But he brings down in Parshas Vayeshev When Yosef HaTzadik got sold by his brothers to the Arabs when he was thrown, it says the vernacular that is used. It says that vehu na'ar, he was considered a nar. Nar in Hebrew the translation is a youth, and that's the vernacular that the Torah uses to use the word nar, which is youth. However, you fast forward another 13 years when he's 30 years old, and the Sar HaMashkim, the wine bearer of Paro, gets freed from prison. I'm not going to go through all the details. If you know what I'm talking about, good. If not, just bear along. The Sar HaMashkim goes over to Paro, and he remembers about the dream that he had, and he starts reminding Paro, there's a dream interpreter in prison that was able to interpret in my dream and the baker's dream, and it was and one was right, and they were both right. One survived, one didn't survive. You could go speak to him because Paro was looking for a dream interpreter. How did the Sar HaMashkim reference Yosef? It says V'shami tanu nar. It says Bereishis chapter 41 verse 12. V'shami tanu nar ivri. He was a nar. Again, it uses the same vernacular, a nar ivri. And the question is, wait a minute. If you want to say a youth, okay, by 17th you could say a youth. By 30, he's still that same nar. I know we all want to be young at heart, and we always want to feel like, we're always 29. We're still 29 for the past, 45 years. We're still 29. But the Torah, this is the vernacular. Why is it using the same vernacular for when he was 17 to when he was 30? So the Zohar, the Tikunei Zohar brings down, and the Shaar HaGilgulim brings down as well from the Arizal, that Yosef was a gilgul, it was a reincarnation of Chanoch, the son of Yered. This is during the time of the Mabel. Chanoch, he did not die. He ended up going up to Shemaim. He went up to heaven while he was still alive, and he became an angel. A very rare case. He became an angel, very famous, angel. We're not supposed to say the name. The short version of it is Metat. He became the angel, the scribe of that, and the proof is in the Psukim in Bereishis chapter 5 verse 24. And Chanoch was with God. And all of a sudden he was no more. Because Hashem took him up, meaning that he took him up while he was still alive. This explains the Chassam Sofer. What was Chanoch? What was so special about Chanoch? Chanoch separated himself from all the other human beings, because during that time humanity was very corrupt, people were falling into sin, and he wanted to remain isolated and close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As a reward, he was ascended to heaven while still alive, and he was transformed into a malach, into an angel. However, we look at Avram Avinu, for example. Avram Avinu did not ascend alive, became an angel. Avram Avinu realized that the purpose of people being on planet Earth is to interact. And that's the reason the man was created. And hence, he was very interactive in his society, into his people, trying to bring them closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it says, as a result, he became even greater than the Malachi Ashars, than the ministering angels. He went even higher up. So this is the story of Chanoch. Chanoch went up to heaven, and he became an angel. So now we have to ask a few questions. Let's ask 3 questions. Number 1, what does this have to do with Yosef? We know that, okay, so Chanoch is a gilgul, came back and a gilgul as Yosef. What does that have to do with us over here? Number 2, what does the word nar have to, we said nar when he was 17, nar when he was 31, nar again, his translation is youth. What does that have to do with Yosef and Chanoch? And furthermore, the third question is, why did the Torah decide to tell us this word nar specifically right before Yosef goes and gets sold into Mitzrayim, and then again when he gets into the power, when he's about to be released out of prison, going into the power of the second in command in Egypt? So Yosef HaTzadik, when he went down to Mitzrayim, the Medrash brings down that he was, as we all know, was very careful from immorality. He refrained from falling into this sin. As a merit, the Medrash tells us, Klal Yisrael, the Jewish nation, when they came down, also safeguarded themselves from this. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says on the Medrash that on the account of this alone, the Jewish people deserve to be redeemed. Meaning that Yosef, when he went down into Egypt and he withstood the test of immorality, this paved the way for all of Klal Yisrael to remain pure and hence go and be redeemed out of Egypt. So what was Chanoch's shortcoming? His shortcoming that he failed to vacate his immediate surrounding. He failed to go and draw people closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yosef came back and he left the comfort of his home, of his father's home, and he went to endure the hardships of Mitzrayim. So the Chanoch, who had the Chanoch, who was failed in an aspect of going out and bringing people in. Now Yosef, he went out and helped people, come in because of the merit that he that he acquired by withstanding the temptation. Says the Zohar HaKadosh on Bereishis, there is a pasuk, there is a verse that is associated with Chanoch, and that is a pasuk in Mishlei, chapter 22, verse 6. Quite famous pasuk. Chanoch lenar al pidarkai ki gam yizaken lo yaser mimena. The translation is, educate a youth according to its way, meaning that what best suits. We know that every person is a different person, every child is a different child. You have to educate a child according to its way, according to what's going to be good for it. And then even the pasuk continues, even when he grows old, he will not deviate from it. So let's try to explain why this pasuk is in reference to Chanoch. If you're not following so far, stay with me. It's going to be mind-blowing very shortly. Asks the Chassam Sofer, there is a legitimate defense that Chanoch had. Chanoch lived during the time of the flood. It was a lot of immorality. And he feared that if he mingles outside, he might fall into temptation. He might fall into sin. So what's better? Better to withstand it. And in fact, Chassam Sofer brings down that even HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, yeah, he was on the edge. He could have gone either way. He wasn't so certain about Chanoch. So if this is the case, if the case is that you don't know if you're going to be able to succeed or you'll fail, then Chanoch did the right thing by refraining, locking himself up. He says, I don't know if I can withstand that test. You're not supposed to put yourself in a situation that you're going to fail. Chanoch said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pass. So why is he have to, punished and having to come back again as Yosef HaTzadik to fix and rectify that, that sin? Says the Shvilei Pinchas that the fault of Chanoch was, to go over and to start like in the masses trying to bring people back. That's not what he was punished for. But why didn't he educate the youth? The young kids during the time, he could have gone over there and started. They were not into the sin yet. They didn't fall into the depravity of the society. They were still pure. Them you could talk to, them you could train, them you could educate, and then hopefully that will prevent the process from repeating itself, and they would, that the society would fall apart. So Chanoch was punished for not speaking to the youth. The adults, he was afraid. Maybe he would fall also if he would go over there. And you know what? He's not even punished for that. But why didn't you go to the youth? That's why the pasuk, and this is what the Zohar connects, the pasuk of Chanoch lenar al pi darko is associated with Chanoch. Besides the fact that it's the same word, saying that his name is Chanoch and it's Chanoch lenar al pi darko, it's because Chanoch failed to educate a child, according to its way. He failed to go out and educate the children. And this is why something very interesting. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah, page 3b, tells us that the angel that Chanoch became, he teaches Torah to children that died in infancy. It's very interesting how everything goes in. So now let's try to do a very brief recap. Yosef is called Nar because he's coming to fix the tikkun, the rectification of his previous gilgul, Chanoch, who didn't go out to help others, specifically the Nar, specifically the children. That's why the Torah tells us right before he went to Mitzrayim, right before he went into Egypt, that's, that he is a Nar. Why? Because that's his tafkid, that's his purpose. His purpose is to go out and help, and he's being forced to go out, but he went out nonetheless. He went out, and not only that, he rectified and he helped because he prevented himself from falling into immorality. That in turn helped the society in itself in the future to prevent itself from falling into immorality. So that was his tafkid, and everything plugs in. These were the same people that Arizal tells us in Shar Psukim that the Bnei Israel, the Jewish people that were subjugated during the time of Mitzrayim, they were the same souls, they were the same neshamas during the generation of the flood. That's why Kol haben hayilud hayirua tishlachut, all the boys, they were thrown into the water. Why were they thrown specifically in the water? They were the same souls that came back that were in the flood, and this is something that they had to go and they had to rectify. It's the same people. It's the same, the Chanoch and the people, Yosef and the people. They were all the same. There, this was the rectification. Says the Zohar Kodesh. The Rebbe of Rapshitz goes and says even further, beautiful how he connected to Chanukah. Yosef, the numerical value of Yosef is 156, the Gematria. Melech Yavan, which is the king of Greece, in Hebrew, Melech Yavan, is also 156. Antiochus is also 156. What connection does Yosef to Antiochus, to Melech Yavan? Yosef lived way, way before that. What did the Greeks outlaw? Yavan, the Greeks, they outlawed Milah. They outlawed that they shouldn't go and they shouldn't make a bris Milah. This was Yosef's specialty. He sanctified the Milah. He was so careful with immorality. The Greeks came and they wanted to go and remove exactly that. And furthermore, the Greeks also tried, and we say this in Al Hanisim, Malchus Yavan Harashal Amcha Yisrael Hashkichem Teresecha. When the kingdom of Yavan, of Greece, was over the Jewish people, what did they try to do? They tried to make them forget the Torah. How can you get that? Ask the Shvila Pinchas, how can you make them forget the Torah? These are people that are learning since they were young. What, are you going to get them to forget the Torah? So you know how the Greeks attempted to get the Jewish people to forget the Torah? They prevented the Jewish people from educating the youths, the Nar, in the ways of the Torah. And they said, if we get the young, if we get the children, then we're going to be able to prevent it from and completely eradicate the study of Torah. And this is why the Gemara in Shabbos, page 21b, says mitzvahs Chanukah ish uveisai. The mitzvah of Chanukah is specifically ish, a man, uveisai, and his household. His household specifically his children. This is the focus is the Greeks tried to get us to forget the Torah specifically by the children. This is why the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, the Gemara in Shabbos tells us, is specifically with your children. And this is something so fascinating. The Gemara in Shabbos, page Chav Gimel Beis 23b, tells us, Hargil bener haven loibanin tamidei chachamim. If someone is very careful in Chanukah, it's a guarantee they will have boys that are Talmidei Chachamim, geniuses in learning Torah. One who is diligent in regarding the mitzvah. Why only candles? It could be anything else. Because this is where the Greeks try to go and eradicate, specifically in the young. You're going to go and you're going to make sure you're going to do the mitzvah of Chanukah correctly. You're going to have children that are going to be huge Talmidei Chachamim. The Greeks oppressed the Jewish people by preventing them to educate the young members of the Jewish nation. Lighting the Chanukah, an entire household, is aimed at educating the youth. The big focus of Chanukah is the education of the young. That's a big focus of Chanukah. But I want to take this a step further. This is really just like an introduction of an introduction. I want to take this a step further. Let's try to break this apart. Let's try to really tear it apart and see how we can implement it into our own lives. We know that the younger you are, the easier it is to change habits. The older you are, the stronger the habits gets, and the more difficult, right? This is obvious, right? A 22-year-old who wants to stop smoking, who's been smoking for 2 years, versus a 50-year-old that's been smoking for 25 years. Obviously, you know which one is going to be easier. The earlier it is, the easier it is, and it's easier. The mind is more amendable. It's easier to go and change a personality trait when you're younger. It's easier to change, a bad habit when you're younger. This is also why Qatar and most of the Islamic world in the Middle East are spending so much money investing in U.S. colleges. Why do they care? Well, if you're investing, why? Because they're trying to get the youth. They're trying to get, if they get the youth, then in the future, if you get them while they're young, they're going to change the future to your benefit, because you're going to be able to manipulate them and brainwash them while they're still young. But I would like to present my own, a little bit of a twist on it, and that is nar. The translation is youth. It could also be related to your thought process, meaning that your thought process is you have, let's say, a desire, you think about it, and then you act on it. And let me try to explain that in marketing, or in marketing in particular. The sequence of marketing, there's three aspects. This is something that's called the intention-action chain, or the intention-behavioral pathway. The sequence is there is motivation. That's how it starts, meaning the desire, there's an urge. Then there is a cognitive processing. There's thoughts, there's planning. Then there is the external manifestation, the action and the behavior, meaning that the way that marketing works, right? The marketing is not going to go and force you to buy something. They can't force you to buy something. They can force you to want to buy something, meaning it's your idea. And how do you get something? If I want you to buy something, how do I make it that you want to do it and not that I want to do it? You have to go on that ground level. You can't go on the latter parts, the external manifestation, the action, meaning that there's desire, thought, and action. The further that you go, you can't just go buy this. Why? I don't need it. I don't want it. Why do I want to buy it? You got to start with a desire. Oh no, you want it. You need it. And then the person starts thinking about it. Yeah, maybe I do need it. And then they'll go and then they'll buy it. There's plenty of examples that you can use. For example, let's say there's a $1,300 office chair. Ergonomic, amazing office chair they want to sell. Who's going to spend $1,300 on an office chair? And how are they going to market this? So they're going to start off with marketing like your $50 chair is slowly killing you. And you think, wow, my chair is going to make that much of a difference. And then it brings studies down. Oh, no, look, there's studies. 80% of back pain, according to this study, is caused by the way that you sit. This chair was bought by 10,000 most respectable and powerful CEOs and leaders of the generation. This is what everybody sits on. The more that you market, and all of a sudden, the $1,300 chair, which makes no sense, is all of a sudden, wait a minute. If the President of the United States sits on this chair, and if all the big CEOs and all the big popular people, they're sitting on this chair, so maybe I do need this chair. Maybe I do want this chair. And then you start, right? And we start rationalizing. Okay, $1,300, how long am I going to have the chair? Let's say I have the chair for 5 years. You're talking about 71 cents a day to sit on a chair like maybe I should. So if they would have gone and be like, oh, I got a chair for you, $1,300, your office chair, you'd be like, what? I don't need it. I have a $50 office chair. What do I need a $1,300 one? But then they start with the marketing aspect, is that it gets it on the ground level. It gets it on your thought process, and it makes you think that you want it. It makes you think that you need it. The beginning is where you're going to be able to change something. You could change someone's thought, you could change your own thoughts, but you have to start at the ground level. The nar, the youth, that's the beginning. You want to change your thought process, you want to change the way that you see things, you want to change the way that you do things, you have to start with the nar. You have to start in the beginning process, as in the early stages. And I want to take a little bit of a detour now, and then we'll plug it all in. In Parshas Vayishlach, Yaakov is fighting an angel. all night. He's fighting this angel. And, at the end of the night, the angel says, okay, let me go. I got to go sing Shira to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, so Yaakov responds back, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. So the angel responds back, what's your name? Which is like, I have so many questions on this. They were fighting all night. Now is the time for pleasantries. Now is the time to like, what's your name? And Vayomer Elav, Ma Shemecha? Vayomer Yaakov. And he says, oh, my name is Yaakov. And he responded, oh, okay, your name is not going to be Yaakov anymore. It's going to be Yisrael. And then Yaakov responded back, Vayishal Yaakov. And Yaakov responded back. This is the dialogue. Agida Hashemecha. Tell me, what is your name? And the angel responds back, Lama zeh tishal shmi? Why are you asking my name? Like, this whole dialogue makes no sense if we stop for a second and think about it. They're fighting all night. They're going back and forth. They never introduced themselves before. You just start fighting with it. Well, what's going on? All of a sudden, the angel wants to leave. So Yaakov says, "Bless me." Says, "Okay, now tell me your name." Yaakov says his name, and then Yaakov responds back. So what's your name? And he says, "Why are you asking me my name?" Like, how do we begin to understand it? Now we could say, okay, I understand why the angel wanted to know Yaakov's name, because he wanted to bless him. You need to know the person's name. You want to bless him. Why did Yaakov respond back, okay, what's your name? It wasn't like these awkward situations where you're on, let's say you're about to board the plane and the ticket lady is over there, is like, okay, have a great flight. And you're like, you too. And then you're like, oh my gosh, you're not flying. I don't know why I said that. It wasn't like this pleasantry that Yaakov is like, that Yaakov goes over to the angel goes over to Yaakov, what's your name? And Yaakov says, oh, my name is Yaakov, what's your name? Like, it wasn't like, oh, that wasn't the purpose. There was a reason why Yaakov wanted the angel's name. So what was going on over here? So we rewind a little bit further to Parshas Toldos. The Megala Mukos tells us something very, very fascinating. This is something that I heard from Rabbi Gedalia Hoffenhag, a phenomenal speaker he only speaks in Hebrew, but really, really phenomenal. So the Megala Mukos in Parshas Toldos says that, when Esav came out, why was his name Esav? Because he was Asui, he was like complete. He was Asui, he was complete. Why did Yaakov, his name is Yaakov? Because he was holding the akev, the ankle of Esav, so he was called Yaakov. So asks the Megala Mukos, wait a minute. If Esav came out Asui, complete, and Yaakov was holding the akev, so why don't we just name Esav, and name him Asui, and name Yaakov akev? Why are we changing the names over here? And it's something very fascinating. The name that was changed, Asui, is Esav with a yud at the end. Yaakov is Akev with a yud in the front. What happened to this yud from Esav? And it switched and it transferred into Yaakov. So the Megala Mukos explains that Al Pi Kabbalah, there was there was a Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov. There was an evil inclination and good inclination. The evil inclination, that represents the left side. The good inclination, that represents the right side. Yaakov went, and Esav came out with the evil inclination. Yaakov's job in life is to take that evil inclination and transfer it into a good inclination. So Esav, he came out Asui with the yud at the end, meaning that's what he represents. Yaakov came and he held on to the ankle, and he went with his, what did he hold on to his ankle? It says biyadai. Yadai is the word yud. Yud and yadai is the same letters. He took the yud, he held on to the ankle, and he took the Esav's, the Yetzer Hara, and he moved it to the beginning of his name, and he took the evil inclination and he transferred it and he converted it into the good inclination. The essence of Yaakov is taking the evil inclination and transferring it into the good inclination. Now Yaakov is fighting. We're fast forwarding back to Parshas Vayishlach, where Yaakov is fighting the angel, and he's saying, "What's your name?" And they go, "My name is Yaakov." Now it's not going to be Yaakov; it's going to be Yisrael. And Yaakov responds, "But what's your name?" Well, you want to know why Yaakov wants to know the angel's name? Yaakov says, my whole purpose in life is to take you and convert it into a good inclination. So who are you? What is your essence?" Yaakov is asking, if I know your name, I know your essence. If I know your essence, I could fight you, I could beat you, I could. So Yaakov wanted to know, what is this? What is this angel? What is this essence, and how do I fight it? And you know what the Satan answered? The evil inclination answered, Lama zatishal shmi. Why? The Malach of Esav says, why are you asking my name? It's almost as if you think like he's not answering the question, but that in itself is the answer. Meaning Yaakov says, what's your name? The angel said, my name is, why do you ask me my name? Meaning, why do you ask is my name. The understanding of it is, you want to know what the essence of the evil inclination? Don't ask any questions. Don't think, just live life. Enjoy. Don't ask about God. Don't think about anything. Just live and enjoy. That's the evil inclination. You think later, right? You don't think right now. Lama zatishal shmi, that in itself is the essence of the evil inclination. Don't ask, don't think, just do. This is what, so the question is, how do we go and how do we overcome it? So listen to this Gemara in Tainus, page 21a. There was two chavrusas. One was the name Ilfa, and the other one is Rabbi Yechanan. They were studying together, and they were very hard pressed for money. They needed money, so they went over to each other. They said, "Let's go out to business." And they sat against this dilapidated wall, this wall that was almost falling, and they were eating bread. And there was two angels that arrived, and Rabbi Yochanan overheard these angels talking. And one angel said to another, "Let us knock down this wall and kill them." Why should we kill them? Because they abandoned the eternal life of studying Torah to engage in business. So the other angel says, no, leave them. One of them still has many achievements that is going to complete. So Rabbi Yochanan is hearing this. And Rabbi Yochanan goes into Eliphaz and he says, did the master hear anything? Did you hear something? And Eliphaz said, no, I didn't hear anything. So Rabbi Yochanan said to himself, if I heard and he didn't hear, must be that they're talking about me. They're talking something towards me. So he goes over to his chavrusa and says, I'm sorry, I'm not going out to business. I'm going back to the base matters. I'm going back to learn. And he went back to learn, and he ended up becoming the head of the Rosh Hashiva, the head of the academy, and his financial situation improved after that. There is a sefer called Mitzrayim Galtanu that asks a few questions on this. How do we break this story down? Like, let's literally break. There's two angels that are standing and talking, and you said, one of them is going to be a leader of the generation. I'm not going to tell you who. Like, they're going back and forth, and only one of them hears it. That's not equal opportunity, right? Equal opportunity is let them both hear it, and let's see who is going to go back and who is going to become the leader of the generation. They're sitting over there and says we should kill them, both of them, and because and then the other one says no, one of them is going to be is going to have great achievements. Let them both hear that, then maybe both of them will have great achievements. Why only one of them heard? Why only Rabbi Yochanan? That's question number one. Question number two, Rabbi Yochanan and Eliphaz, they were Amoraim. They were geniuses in the highest righteous level. If they left for business, it wasn't because they couldn't go on vacations and they couldn't afford the third car or the second house. It was because they couldn't have any milk in the fridge. Because they couldn't have any bread on their table. They had a marriage contract. They had to go and support the family, and they couldn't support it anymore. So they were legitimate for what they were doing, for leaving. So why is it for this they deserve to die? These two angels are saying, "Oh, let's kill them." Why? Why are you going to kill them? What are they doing wrong over here? They're going out and they're going to work. They need to support the family after all, no? So what, for this they deserve to die? That's question number two. Question number three, what's going on over here? The angels are conducting a court case on top of this wall and be like, should we kill this guy? Should we kill that guy? Angels have a mission. How are they going? What is this? Like a mafia situation over here? They're going to kill this guy because they don't like what's going on. You can't kill unless you have a job, and if your job is to kill, then you kill. You can't decide. And this leads us to question number four. Even if you have the authority to kill, it's very simple. You're an angel. One of them is going to succeed. One of them is not going to succeed. You wanted to kill both of them, but the other angel says no. You can't kill both of them because one of them is succeed. So kill the one that's not going to succeed, and leave the one that's going to succeed. So what's going on over here? How do we understand this story in the Gemara? So the answer is, that when you look in the Gemara, you could tell when you learn from a person, right? You get to know a personality. I'm sure many people, by listening to me, they know a little bit about my personality. You listen to other speakers, you get to know a little bit about their personality. You look in the Gemara, you start learning about these Amoraim, these Tanaim. You get to learn their personality. You get to learn by learning their teachings. You get to know their essence of what they are. There's a medrash in Mishpatim that speaks about a story with this same Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was walking along with his student Rabbi Chia bar Abba, and he was going from Tveria to Tzipari, and they're walking along the way, and then Rabbi Yochanan, points to a vineyard of grapes, and Rabbi Yochanan says to the student, he says, "You see that vineyard?" And the student says, "Yes." Says, "This used to belong to me, but I sold it." So the student said, "Why did you sell it?" "Because I wanted to immerse myself only in Torah, and I didn't want to have any distractions." So, okay, very nice. They're walking a little bit more, and they pass by an olive grove. And Rabbi Yochanan says, "You see that olive grove?" And the student says, "Yeah, I see the olive grove." He says, "That used to be mine, but I sold it." So he says, "Why did you sell it?" "Because I want my mind to be only focused on Torah, and I don't want to have any distractions." They keep on walking, and they pass by a field of grape. And the same story happened. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Oh, you see that? That used to be mine, and I sold it because I only want to be focused on Torah, and I don't want to have any distractions whatsoever." And then Rabbi Chia bar Abba, the student, started crying. And Rabbi Yochanan says, "Why are you crying?" He says, "What are you going to leave for your old age? You sold everything, off. How are you going to survive on?" So he responded back. He said, "I sold something that was given in 7 days, right? Because 6 days the world was created, and the 7th day Hashem rested. And I purchased something that was given in 40 days, because it says that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the Shemayim, to the heavens, for 40 days and 40 nights." So explains the Sefer Metatron Galtanu. This teaching of Rabbi Yochanan teaches us his essence. You know what we learn about Rabbi Yochanan? That his connection to Torah, his desire to Torah was so strong. This is all that he cared about. He didn't care about anything else. And when it was time for him to close the Gemara and go out to work, what bothered him the most is like, I wish I could stay by the Gemara. I wish I didn't have to leave learning. I wish I could stay with the learning. Says the Gemara in Makkos, page 10. It teaches us the desire, the way a person wants to go, they will go and they will lead him. Asks the Maharsha, who is it they? What do you mean they? Who's they going to lead them? You have a desire, who's they that are going to lead you? Answers the Maharsha, when a person has a desire, when a person has a need, a want, and they want to do something, that creates angels. Those angels will lead you to whatever it is that you desire. The power of will has the power to create angels and assist you to your will, to whatever it is that you desire. And we see this also very beautifully in the Gemara on Bava Metzia, page 86a, that tells us that Avram Avinu, after the Bris Milah, he was sitting at the entrance of the tent. And he needed guests. That was his essence. He said, "I need guests." So he sends his servant Eliezer to go fetch for guests. Why were there no guests? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu took out the covering from the sun, and then it became very, very hot. So nobody was out and about. Everybody was inside in the shade. It was too hot. But Avram Avinu needed to have some guests, so he sends his servant Eliezer to go and bring guests. Eliezer comes back, sweating, beat red, he's like, Avram Avinu says, "Where are the guests?" And Eliezer says, "I searched, I looked, there's none." And Avram says, "What? No, it can't be. Don't believe you. What do you mean? What is that interaction? What do you mean that Avram doesn't believe Eliezer?" He says, "No, it can't be." And in fact, what Avram did is Avram went out and went to the entrance, and all of a sudden 3 angels came. He didn't know it was angels. It was back then. It was guests, and they came in. How do we understand this? What was that interaction where Eliezer came back and he says, "There's no guests," and Avram says, "No, it can't be." What? You don't trust your servant Eliezer? This is the same servant that he for his only son, for his main son, Yitzchak. He went and he sent his servant to find him a shidduch, find him a match, find him a spouse. You trust him enough to find your son, who is going to succeed you in everything, a wife that you trust enough, but you don't trust enough that when he goes out, he didn't find any guests. You trust him enough when Eliezer went to find a wife for his son's for his master's son, Yitzchak, a wife. It says that he took 10 camels, v'chol tuv adanav, and he took all the good, meaning, what is it, all the good? All the good, Rashi says, everything that he owned, meaning Avram Avinu signed him off everything. his whole fortune. He trusted Eliezer to find a shidduch for his son. He trusted Eliezer to be able to go and take his entire possessions. But when Eliezer walks out to look for guests, that he didn't trust him. Like, how do we begin to understand that? So Avram Avinu, what he was saying is, if you really wanted to find guests, you would have found guests, because it's your desire. If you desire guests, God, there's angels that come from that, and desire creates angels. So if you really, why I said, what Avram says, I don't believe you, something's off over here, because you really didn't look for it. If you really looked for it, if you really desired it, if you really wanted those guests, you would have found the guests. And hence, that's why Avram Avinu, he really wanted it, he got the guests. Says the Sefer Metatron Galtanu, Rabbi Yochanan was sitting by the Gemara, and he had to close it because he had to go work because he didn't have enough food to survive for his family. What happened with that desire? That desire created angels. We said desire creates angels. But explains the Maharsha, there are angels. You have a desire, you create angels, and they guide you. You want to know what those two angels are doing on the wall over there? It says, oh, let's kill him, let's not kill him, they go back and forth. Those are the angels that Rabbi Yochanan created when he closed the Gemara and he had that desire that he wanted to stay. So now he created angels that would try to get in to convince him and push him to stay. And that's why only he heard it. And that's why they were saying, well, they were going to kill. There was no aspect of killing. The mission of the angels was get Rabbi Yochanan back to learning. And the mission was successful. That's what only Rabbi Yochanan heard. And that because Rabbi Yochanan there was no equal opportunity. Rabbi Yochanan created the opportunity. The opportunity was that he had that desire. If you have the desire, God will guide you. If you have that desire, there was angels that is created. And once angels are created, they're going to go and they're going to help you. That is why the Torah tells us in Bereishis chapter 4 verse 7 that the how do you overcome the Satan? The atat timshal bay. The pasuk tells us. Rashi, you look at Rashi over there. In tirtze tiskaber alav. If you want, you'll overcome it. Seems very well, yeah. If you want to win it, you'll win it. It seems like it makes no sense, but no. If you have a desire to overcome the evil inclination, you will win it. If you have a desire to overcome the evil inclination strong enough, then guess what? You will succeed in it. Yaakov Avinu, he was asking the angel, what am I supposed to do? What is your essence? What is your name? How do I get rid of you? How do I go and overcome you? How do I overpower you? Tell me your name. What's your essence? And the angel says, my essence is, Lama zeh tishal shmi. Don't ask any questions. Don't think about anything. Just do it. Just go and around. And the way to go around it is if you have the desire, if you want it, if you think about it, if you start asking the questions, then you're going to be able to overcome it. It all starts on the desire. It all starts on the essence. And we see this, the desire when a person has like this motivation, this desire, the changes, like their physical strength as well. And there's many stories. I just looked up and I picked the first two that came. There was of like superhuman strength when push comes to shove. In 2012, there was one by the name of Lauren Kornacki. She was a 22-year-old girl in Virginia. Her father, Leo, was working under his BMW. The jack slipped and it fell. The car fell on his chest, and it was slowly killing him. The daughter heard this, ran over to the car, picked up this 3,200-pound car, and her father was able to go and get out. And the father broke bones and had a collapsed lung. The doctor said it was only because she had the superhuman strength to lift 3,200 pounds. You know what it means to lift 3,200 pounds? You could pay someone $1 billion, they're not going to be able to lift 3,200 pounds. But yet somehow the desire changes. There's a need, all those famous, the mother picks up a bus to be able to save her baby. You think about all these things, like, these are all fictional. Not necessarily. I mean, maybe some of them are, but not necessarily, because when there is such a need, when there's such a love for something, when a mother loves a child so much and there's something that happens, there's nothing that's going to stand in the way. It's not just the mama bear that you got to be afraid of. It's every single mother has such this strong love for her child that no matter what that child is, the mother will stop at nothing to be able to go and save that child. There was a woman in Eretz Yisrael. She was watching her sick child, and was home that day, and the child was playing, and in Israel, these bars that go around the windows. And the child kind of slipped through, and the mother didn't even see it, but then she saw like two hands just like holding on in the bar, and she runs over and she starts grabbing this child, and she starts screaming for help. The buildings there are pretty tall. You can't, how the child got in, don't ask me. She wasn't able to bring the child back. She needed to get somebody to help her from the downstairs apartment to be able to go and save this child. She's holding this child, screaming, but the child was sick. It was in the middle of the day. No one's home. Everyone's out at work or everyone's learning. She's screaming and she's holding the child for none other than 5.5 hours. 5.5 hours until somebody looked up and they saw that there was a woman that was holding, and then they called the fire department. The journalist that came over there says, how do you hold a child for 5.5 hours? You can't even hold a child for a half hour. Forget about 5.5 hours. The mother looked at this person and be like, what is your question? She responded, eventually, this is my son. Like, there's no question. You don't start thinking about it. Somehow she was able to to hold it. There's a superhuman strength, because when there's a desire, when there's a need, when there's a want, there's nothing that stands in the way. The Sons of Klosterberger Rabbi Kutil Yehuda Halberstam, after the Holocaust, he went and he visited this refugee camp, and there was 150 prisoners over there. And he went to give them chizuk, to give them, to raise their hopes, to speak a little bit for them. After, he spoke to them, he goes into his bag, and he says, I have a present for you. He pulls out a pair of tzitzis, and he says, I wish I had 150 pairs of tzitzis to give each and every single one of you. This is after 5.5 years of in the Holocaust, and they didn't see a tzitzis in who knows how long. And now he pulls out a tzitzis, and he says, I have a present for you. And he looks around the room, and everyone's like, wide-eyed, I haven't seen a tzitzis in so long. And the Rebbe, says, I don't know how I'm going to decide who I'm going to give this to. So I decided I'm going to do a raffle. They took 150 pieces of paper, and they each wrote their name. They put it in a bag, and it's going to be mixed up, and the winner is going to get this tzitzis. There was one young man there by the name of Mendel. He starts walking up towards the Rebbe. He stands up on a chair. He takes his shirt, untucks it, and he starts ripping his shirt from one side, and then he rips it on the other side, and he goes to the Rebbe and says, Rebbe, those tzitzis belong to me. And the Rebbe looks at him and says, that's very nice. I'm sure that you wanted it, very much, just like everybody else, but why do you think that this belongs to you more than anybody else? And Mendel says, Rebbe, look, I am the only one who's required halachically to wear tzitzis. Tzitzis is a requirement in a four-cornered beged, a four-cornered garment. Everybody else has regular shirts on. Because he ripped it, he has now four corners. And he says, now I need it. So the Rebbe smiled at him. And he says, if that's the case, he says, because I already said that we are going to make a raffle, we're going to put 150 names in, and whatever comes out, that's going to be the winner. If your desire is really that true, and it's really that much that you want to wear the tzitzis, then God will make it that your name will come out. They wrote 150 names on pieces of paper. They mixed it out. They mixed it all around. The Rebbe pulled out, and they pulled out none other than this Mendel. And this Mendel got the pair of tzitzis, because when you have a desire, when you have a want, you create angels. And that angels has the ability to go and help you achieve it, everything that you want and everything that you desire. And now let's plug this into Chanukah. When you look at Chanukah, actually, let's back it up. I want to share with you one other aspect that is extremely important. This aspect of desire, this aspect of need, it's not only in let's say in Judy, but it's not only in anything, meaning it can be in any angle that you want it. You want to be a better parent, you want to be a better spouse, you want to be a better worker, you want to be a better businessman, you want to be a better person. The power of will has the power to go and overcome every angle, every obstacle. There was once a woman who, she lived in Israel. She was an almana. She had 7 children. No money. Lived barely surviving. One day she walks into her house and she sees that something from the floor, there's like sewer liquid coming from in the floor. There must be a pipe under the floor that's throwing up some sewer liquid. So she quickly calls the plumber. He says, you can't live over here. It smells, it stinks. The whole house is filled with this. Can you fix it? So the plumber looks at it and he says, I could fix it, but it might take a while. She's like, how much is it going to cost? She was living in dire poverty. And he says, to be honest, I don't know how much it's going to cost because it's going to depend. I'm going to come here one day. I'm going to open up the floor. Israel floor is very different than American floor. There's cement. It's a whole job. I have to start opening up the floor. If I find it on the first day, you're talking about a few hundred shekels. If I'm going to be here for a week or 2 weeks, it could be up to 30,000 shekels. I don't know. So this almana, this widow, was thinking, says, what am I going to do? How am I going to be? I cannot, we can't live like this. It smells, we can't survive like this. He says, okay, do what you got to do. She says, okay, I'll come start working tomorrow. He comes the next day and he starts breaking into the floors and he starts inspecting, and the widow is walking in, checking in, everything, how's it going? He says, yeah, sorry, still working, didn't find anything. He says, at the end of the day, he says, I'm sorry, I didn't find anything. I'm going to come back tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be able to find it tomorrow. He comes back tomorrow. Every few hours she checks, did you find anything? Did you find maybe the leak of what the issue was? And he says, I'm so sorry, I still didn't find it. And he still, I still need to look. Day in and day out, she keeps on coming in every hour because she thinks every hour is more money. How am I going to be able to go and pay for this? Meanwhile, he notices this also. He looks around and he sees that the kids don't even have anything to eat. So he decides that, when he's going to bring in lunch to eat, he's going to bring extra food. So he could also leave the leftovers for the kids as well. So this is where they have some food. And this is what he'll do day in and day out. He stayed in for over 2 weeks. And she is going out of her mind. She's like, it's probably going to be 30, 40,000 shekels. How am I going to be able to pay this? I barely could pay, I don't have any food in the house. How am I going to pay this bill? So after 2 weeks, he goes and he tells her, I found the problem. I was able to close it. You're not going to have the issue anymore. We're just closing the floor and we're all done. So she very shakenly, she goes over to him and she says, how much do I owe you? So he was thinking about this and he was thinking, how am I going to go and I'm going to charge this widow who doesn't have any money for even, he says, this is going to be my tzedakah. This is going to be my charity. He didn't tell her this. He says, no. He says, you don't have to worry about it. What happened was, he says, because I was opening the ground and I had to go underground and, I started taking pictures. I said, wait a minute, this is not really your responsibility. This should really be the city's responsibility. So I started taking pictures. I started submitting paperwork. And over the course of the past 2 weeks, last night they came to me and they said, you know what? They're covering the entire bill. You don't have to worry about anything. She says, what? I don't have to worry about anything. She started blessing him. Thank you so much. Thank you. You don't know what this means to me. Thank you so much. And they parted their ways. Fast forward 25 years. 25 years go by. And this plumber decides that he wants to retire. And he decides that upon his retirement, he wants to move away from the city. He wants to go live by the water. And he bought himself this piece of land. And because he was in the construction business, he was going to go and build himself something very, very nice for retirement. So he makes his plans of what he's going to build, and then he goes and reaches out to different suppliers for how much, get quotes on how much materials would cost. And he gets quotes, quite a few quotes from all suppliers. And he didn't make any decision yet. And one day he's sitting by the property site, the land, and all of a sudden a bunch of trucks pull up with a bunch of material. And he's looking at them. He says, where are they going? And they go right into his property. And he's like, what are they doing? And they start unloading. And he walks up with them. He says, what are you guys doing? He says, and the worker looks at the piece of paper and he says, no, it says over here we have to deliver the material today. And he looks at the paper and it says his address. It says to be delivered. And he says, I didn't sign anything. I didn't pay anything. What is this? And the worker says, listen, I just work over here. I was told to deliver. I have to deliver. And the guy said, I'm refusing, to accept this delivery. This was Israel. And the guy says, my job is to deliver. I'll deliver. You have an issue, go to the office and deal with the office. So the guy quickly jumps in his car, runs into the office, and he goes into the secretary. He says, I don't understand what's going on. He says, I have the paperwork over here. You guys are delivering me material. I didn't order it. I got a quote. You guys came in like 20% higher than everyone else. I wasn't going to use you in any case. I says, I'm not paying for this. You guys have to go and you guys have to remove the material. So the secretary looks and says, listen. So she says, you got to go speak to the boss. And the boss is up there. And he goes up to the boss and he says, I don't understand. What is this order? I didn't order this. He says, this is not, I never signed anything. I'm not paying for this. And the boss looks at it. He looks over the order. And he says, oh, no, this order is taken care of already. And the plumber is like, what do you mean taken care of? I'm not paying for this. You guys came in much higher. I'm not paying for it. And the boss looks at it and says, no, this order was paid already. He says, paid already? I didn't pay anything. The owner of this construction company says, no, it was paid by the city. And the plumber's like, what, paid by the city? The city's not paying for my construction. What are you talking about? I'm not dealing with this. Please remove it. And the owner of this construction company starts smiling. And he says, you don't recognize me, but I recognize you. 25 years ago, you came to my house. My mother was a widow. I was the oldest child. I was 14 years old at the time. And you came to fix a pipe that you were there for quite a few weeks. And then when the bill came, you said that the city paid for it. I knew the city is not paying for this. And I told my mother was crying every single night. I said, Ma, let me leave yeshiva. I'll work. I'll have pay for this. When I said that, she started crying even more. I says, okay, fine, I'm not going to leave yeshiva. And I never saw my mother cry so much. Every single night that you left and you couldn't find something, she was crying. She didn't know how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to be able to survive? How are we going to be able to deal with it? And I was so broken. I says, what's going to be with my mother, my dear mother, the almana? What am I going to do? And finally, after a few weeks, you came and you said the city paid for it. This boss of the construction company says to this plumber, he says, I've never seen my mother so happy in my life. She was so happy. She's saying thank you, shiras and tishbachas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She was so happy. And I vowed that day, says, I don't know how, but one day I want to pay that plumber back. I want to pay that plumber back. And constantly that was on my mind, but I didn't know how I was going to pay you back. And all of a sudden, I saw that you came in and your name rang a bell, and I said, you know what, this is how I'm going to go, and this is how I'm going to go, and I'm paying back. And that's why I'll tell you again, it says, just like my mother's work was taken care of by the city, your work is taken care by the city as well. The reason why this man had the ability to have a karsa tov 25 years later, he had that desire inside of him the entire time. The entire time his desire was, I want to be able to go and do my gratitude, a karsa tov to this person. He had that constant desire. When the opportunity arose, he jumped on it. When we have a desire to do something good, when we have a desire to go and accomplish, when we have a desire, then we will seize any opportunity that comes. If we don't have the desire, the opportunities come and the opportunities go. But if you have the desire to do chesed, then just like Avram Avinu, you'll have the ability to do chesed. If you have the desire to go and learn, then you'll learn. If you have the desire to be kind, then you'll be kind. If you have the desire, it all depends on the origin. It all depends on your origin story. It all depends on that early stages of your mind. Where is your desire? Where is your thought? Now we could plug it into Chanukah. At Chanukah we go and we light the candles. You think about it, why is this the big thing of Chanukah? There was a whole army that was going and that was fighting the small Jewish army. That should be the bigger thing. But no, because we found a little bit of oil and it lasted for 8 days, this is what we publicize. This is what we go. And this is the essence of Chanukah. If you go to anybody, even they're learned, it says, how do you define Chanukah? The first thing they'll say is candles, right? Maybe they'll say oily donuts or something like that. But the essence is the candles. It's the oil. Why? Why is it so much emphasis on the oil? So let's look at what the reason of that oil. The oil was not something that was necessary or required. It was Tumah Hujah B'Tzibur. The Jewish people at that time did not need a special seal of the Kohen Gadol, which is what they were looking for. They needed any oil. They could have found any oil, and they had plenty of oil. But they wanted specifically the most kosher, holiest oil. But because they had that desire, they said, you know what, we've been impure for so long, we just want to do it right. We just want to do it right. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said they had such a strong desire to do it right. And that's what it all started from. It started from the desire, just let us find this pure oil. All the Greeks came and they defiled all the oil. But the Jewish people, that had such a desire, such a want, such a need, that they wanted to go and find that oil. They wanted to find it so much. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, you're going to create angels. As the Gemara Makkas tells us, they created the angels, and now they created the angels. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it that they would find it. You know what we publicize every Chanukah? It's the oil, because the oil is all based on that desire. What did you want? You wanted it so badly. You wanted to do good so badly. This is what you publicize, because that is the essence of Chanukah. The essence of Chanukah is you have to know what is your desire, what is your need, where is your nar, what's your origin. If you're going to go and you're going to focus the way that they did in the time of the Chanukah story, then you're going to be able to succeed. You're going to be able to light up the world. The desire is the want. That is something that you need to do it right. You have to just start with that, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take the rest. That's why we look at the candles. We have to remember what's its origin, what's its nar, what's its origin. The origin is the desire. It's in the thinking. It's in the early stages. This is what the Greeks tried to get away from us. They tried to go and focus on not teaching the children, not teaching the early stages, not teaching the youth, not teaching the nar. You want to change who you are. You have to go to your core. You have to go to your origin, your nar, your essence, your beginning stages. If you make your desire, your wants, your needs, then angels are created and then will assist you for that. And you could say, okay, that's a great class, and you can, if you're with me, maybe I understand most of it. But it's very hard to change that. It's very hard to have that desire. It's very hard to now all of a sudden be like, okay, I have such a strong desire to be great, and I have such a strong desire to succeed, and I have such a strong desire to be a better person, a better spouse, a better father, a better mother, a better whatever. You can say it's very difficult. This is why specifically on Chanukah this comes. Because in Chanukah, the Torah tells us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a light. And the light was a great light. It was an amazing light. It was a very special light. This light was known as the Ar HaGanus. Later became known as the Ar HaGanus. It was a hidden light, because this light was not a light that we see, the sun and the moon. The sun and the sun and the lights, where they were created afterwards. There was a light that was created in the beginning of creation that was clarity, that was pure, that is something that was it's like waking up in a dark. It's like, imagine going into a dark room and you're bumping into everything, and then you open light and everything makes sense. This is the light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. Everything makes sense in the world. Everything just makes sense. However, HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that this is going to be misused by the wicked people. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu took this light, this hidden light, this amazing light, and he hid it. Where did he hid it? This light existed for 36 hours. He went and he hid it in the Chanukah candles during the time of Chanukah. If you count the candles, each one, like one with the shaman, you end up at the number 36. The Ar HaGanus, the clarity, that's like all of a sudden everything just like makes sense, and you're like, oh yeah, I see Yiddishkeit, I see Judaism, I see God. Everything just makes sense. The Ar HaGanus was that everything just makes perfect sense. That was hidden and was taken away from the creation and was put into Chanukah. Chanukah is that time where you're able to like have that spark of clarity, that spark of just like everything just like plugs in of like what you're supposed to do. And this is specifically what the Yavanim, the Greeks, they were trying to extinguish. They were trying to extinguish the spiritual thought process, that live a free life. But the Jewish people said, no, we want to find that one jug of oil, that hidden spark in every single one of us. That's what the desire was, and that's what they found it. Now I want to plug everything together, and then you can burst into dancing in joy because it's so beautiful. We started off. Yosef came back as a gilgul, a reincarnation, to fix Chanoch. Chanoch is known as Nar. Nar, why was he known as a Nar? Because he didn't help the young children and educate them. Yes, for the older people, he couldn't go and he couldn't educate them. But the young children, that he could have educated them. That he wouldn't have been afraid that he would be influenced by them. But because he stayed away from the public, Yosef had to come down and be thrown into the public, the worst public in Egypt. And the merit of Yosef, he saved the entire Klal Yisrael. Everything came back to fix. The same neshamas in the Mabul, they came back. And some of them, were thrown into the Nile, and some of them were able to survive. But it was the same souls that came back during the time of Chanoch and during the time of Yosef. And Yosef now fixed that by going and being in the public. The merit of Yosef saved the entire Klal Yisrael. We said that Yosef, the numerical value, is 156, the same numerical value as Malkiyavan, and same numerical value of Antiochus, because they tried to remove what Yosef and Chanoch did. Yosef was careful with immorality. They outlawed Milah. They outlawed the bris Milah because they tried to get the Jewish people to fail in that. Chanoch, what was Chanoch al Nara Pidarka? What was the what do we say in Al Anisim? We say in Al Anisim, Kisha Amda Malchus Yavan Harash Al Amcha Yisrael Ashkicham Teresecha. They wanted to forget the Torah. How did they want to forget the Torah? By focusing on the Nar, by focusing on the children, by focusing on going and making sure, preventing any child from going and learning Torah. That's how they tried to go to prevent them by starting at the origin, by getting them at the source, at the core. Then we went over to Yaakov. What was Yaakov's essence? Yaakov's essence was taking the Yud from Esau, from Asui, and moving it into Akif, from Yaakov, to moving it from the left, from the evil inclination, to the right, to the good inclination. That was Yaakov's essence. But all of a sudden, Yaakov is fighting with the angel. And Yaakov says, bless me. So he says, what's your name? And he says, oh, my name is Yaakov. He says, no, your name is not going to be Yaakov, it's going to be Yisrael. Now, what are we, the Jewish people know now? We're not known as Bnei Avram. We're not known as Bnei Yitzchak. We're known as Bnei Yisrael. This name, Yisrael, this became the name of the entire nation. So Yaakov says, wait a minute, this is not just me anymore. I need to pass on information to my children. So he says, Hagideli, Mashimcha, tell me, what is your name? What's your essence? What am I going to tell my children? How are they going to go and fight you? And how are they going to be able to go and overcome you? And he said, Lama Zatishalashmi. You know what my essence is? Don't ask, don't think, don't desire, just do. If my essence is, if you don't think and you just leave it be, that's how I will succeed. You want to go against me, you got to do the inverse of that. Asking is the thinking. The Satan says, don't ask, don't think. And this is why the Gemara Makkas tells us, the way that you want to go, that's the way that they will lead you. Who's there going to lead you? The angels are going to lead you. The angels, just like the angels led Rabbi Yochanan, just like the angels led, Avram Avinu, the angels come, and whatever your desire is, whatever your origin is, whatever your again, your desire is in the initial process. Your desire, thought, you want to change who you are, you got to change it at the core. How do you change it at the core? You have to focus on your desire and your thought process. Everything starts up here. Everything starts up there. Chanukah specifically is a time that you'll be able to change this. Because Chanukah is a time that we look at the candles and we look and we say the reason why we light candles is because the Jewish people, they wanted so bad. They didn't need to find the oil. They had plenty of oil. They needed specifically to find the best of the best. And you know what? Because they had that need, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you have that desire, you're going to create angels, you're going to find it. But this is what you're going to publicize, because this is the essence of Chanukah. Have focus on your desire, focus on your need. Where is it? The time to change is the origin. And if you say, wait a minute, it's too hard, I can't do it. Chanukah is the time that the Or HaGanus shine. This is the light of clarity. This is the time that you have the easiest boost to be able to do the best thing that you can for you. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu help every single one of us that we should be able to utilize the Or HaGanus, to be able to utilize the lessons of Chanukah, that we should be able to change our core, change our desires, change our essence, and hence go over and be able to overcome the Yetzer Hara, overcome the Satan of the fight of Yaakov and the angel of Esau. And we learn the lesson of Lama Zatishalashmi. We realize that we have to start asking questions, we have to start thinking, and we change that desire, we change that core. With the help of Chanukah, we'll be able to succeed everything and be blessed with an amazing, amazing Chanukah. We'll say a couple of Tehillim, and then we'll open up if there are any questions. Shir Amal, this is chapter 130. As usual, we say for Klal Yisrael, Shir Amalais, V'ma Kim Karasicha Adonai. Adonai Shema Bekoili Tiena Aznecha Kashuv Vais Lekol Tachanunai Im Avaynes Tishmar Ya Adonai Mi Amoid Kim Chaslicha Lemanti Varei Kivisi Adonai Kivsa Nafshi Levil Dvaraya Chalti Nafshi La Adonai Mishamim La Beker Shemim La Beker Yachal Yisrael La Adonai Kim Adonai Yachesed Varei Maifidos V'Uif Das Yisrael Mikol Avanesav Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Asunim Batzara V'Shiv Yahaim De Bein Bayam U'Bein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Aleim V'Yatziam Mitzara L'Rvacha Ma'afela L'Ara Meshiba L'Gula Hashta Bagala Bezman Krev and Amar Amen. Thank you all for joining, and may you all have an amazing and uplifting Chanukah.